This is the pinnacle of Hyundai N performance in the present. It's the i30N TCR Racer. And this is the future of N performance. It's called the RN22e Roll-In Lab, and we've come here to the Ben Motorsport Park in South Australia to see what it's all about. So what is the RN22e exactly? Well, like I say, Hyundai calls it a roll-in lab rather than a concept car. That's because it is a functional prototype, which means soon we'll get to take it out on the track and see what it does. In broad terms, this is a test bed for the brand's switch to electric performance cars, which will begin in 2023 with the arrival of the Hyundai Ioniq 5N. What does this share in common with that car? Well, it's got the same eGMP underpinnings and a new dual motor powertrain, which gets a more powerful motor at the rear, a more powerful motor at the front to generate 430 kilowatts of power, 740 Newton meters of torque. But it's also got some really cool new features and new technology that the Hyundai is hoping injects some of the fun to drive spirit that they like to imbue in all of their N models. That includes N E-Shift, which is basically a virtual gear shift. So when you drive the car, it's supposed to feel like, a conventional combustion engine vehicle with those snappy upshifts and downshifts. And it's also got N Sound Plus, which is trying to generate some artificial sound both with internal speakers and external speakers to again get that emotional driving experience. But anyway, that's enough talk. Let's go driving. Climbing aboard the RN22e, you realise straight away that this really is a roll-in lab rather than a concept car. Unlike a traditional concept car that is designed to just look good on a motor show stand, the RN22e is genuinely functional. For starters, you've got no carpets on the floor, it's just bare metal. You sit in a race seat with a racing harness. The steering wheel is the kind of wheel you'll expect to find in an i30N TCR. And yet, the indicator stalks, the gear selector, the dashboard are all what you'll find in the Ioniq 5N and what's going to be found in the upcoming Ioniq 6. So it's a real mixture of parts to make a functional test bed. Like any electric car, getting going is easy. You simply press the on button, select forward gear, and away you go. Hitting the track, the first thing that grabs you, of course, is the acceleration. Electric cars are, of course, famous for how ferociously they accelerate, and the RN22e is no different. As soon as we're out on track and we're able to unleash all that power and all that torque, it really does rocket forward. Like, it's got incredible punch out of the corners, going through some of the slower corners around the bend. When you get on the accelerator to power out, it really launches forward. Going down the straight, the RN22e has little trouble dispatching its petrol-powered predecessors. While they tended to max out at around 200 kilometers an hour, the RN22e, even on a slightly damp track, thanks to some earlier showers, managed to keep going way beyond that. Certainly over the course of the lap, the RN22e is much quicker. One of the reasons is it's got an incredibly advanced chassis underneath it. eGMP, for starters, is Hyundai's latest electric vehicle platform, so it's got the latest in battery technology, and it previewing the kind of technology we'll get in the Ioniq 5N, which is a battery and an inverter system that is designed specifically for track use. It also features something Hyundai calls electronic torque vectoring by twin clutch. It basically just uses a pair of clutches on the rear to direct drive when needed to help sharper turning. And it certainly does feel sharp, especially when the Pirelli P0 Corsa tyres, which are a little tricky when they're cold, when they get up to temperature, you really can carry a lot of speed in the corners, even though the weight of the car is very noticeable. There's no disguising the fact this is an electric vehicle with a big, heavy battery. But despite that, because of the technology Hyundai has used, it really does feel incredibly dynamic for what it is. Having driven the Porsche Taycan around the bend as well this year, I wouldn't say the RN22e is necessarily a Porsche beater, but it does hold its own, certainly, and that's something you can not have said about any previous Hyundai. But of course, the two big ticket items that we're really keen to explore on the RN22e is the NE Shift and the N Sound Plus. These two new technologies that Hyundai has developed to try and create a sense of emotion around electric vehicles. NE Shift is basically a virtual gearbox. Hyundai has developed a system where you use the steering wheel mounted paddles just like you would in a regular dual clutch car like their i30N. You pull back to go up, and if you don't pull back in time, it actually cuts power. So it is really genuinely like, it makes it feel like you are driving an electric car with a traditional gearbox. It is different. It's unnecessary. It is a single speed transmission, so it doesn't actually need any gears, but it does what Hyundai wanted it to do, which is create more of that emotional driving experience. Similar for the N Sound Plus, which is basically speakers on the inside and the outside of the car that generate a simulated engine noise or motor noise to add a feeling of acceleration and deceleration that you get from an engine, which is part of both the emotional experience but also helps you understand how quickly you're going. So it really does add something to the driving experience, even if it is, again, unnecessary and digitized. But both systems, of course, they can be turned off. So if you don't want them, you don't have to use them. And it's easy to sort of suggest, if you haven't tried them, that they are a bit of a gimmick. But certainly I think for owners, having experienced these systems, I think owners like we experienced at the Hyundai N Festival where we drove the RN22e, they're probably going to like it. A lot of drivers will. It's the kind of system that you'll use if you're on the track or on a particularly windy stretch of road where you really just want to have a bit of that old school driving experience. They certainly add a new element. Unfortunately, our time in the RN22e was brief, only a handful of laps, but it does give us a taste of what's to come from the South Korean brand. It's a big challenge trying to build engaging performance cars, and Hyundai has achieved that with the likes of the i30N and the i20N hot hatches. Will they be able to recreate that with the Ioniq 5N that's due in 2023, and eventually the Ioniq 6N that the RN22e really previews? Based on our initial drive, it's easy to say these cars are quick. Are they emotionally engaging, which is really what Hyundai wants? Well, we'll have to reserve final judgment until we get into the production cars, but certainly this brief taste has left me wanting more. And I think that is the highest compliment we can pay to the RN22e.